Sir, I don't think you understand. We need to leave. Now. Milo lashed out a tentacle toward the lumbering brute he called a bodyguard, his gelatinous body shimmering under the fluorescent light. Jorda, shut your hairy mouth. Humans are nothing more than smaller, weaker, and significantly less hairy versions of you. If you can't handle one of them, I might as well fire you on the spot. In 10 long cycles of working for Milo, Jorda had faced tanks, mercenaries, and even apex predators from 3 different galaxies. Fear had never been part of his vocabulary. Yet as Milo barked his orders, the Huktor warlord's massive frame quivered. B-Boss Jorda stammered, his voice low and strained, "You don't get it. This isn't just any human. It's a name-taker." Milo paused, a rare moment of hesitation crossing his translucent form. "A what?" "A name-taker," Jorda whispered, leaning in as if the very word might summon the demon itself. "They're not super soldiers. They're demons wrapped in flesh. If this one's really after you," he glanced at the monitors displaying heart rates of Milo's security detail, which flatlined one by one. ... Then we're already dead men walking. Jorda placed one meaty paw on Milo's shoulder, the closest thing his species had to a reassuring gesture. "Sir, if you want to live, we need to move." Milo turned to the monitors again, where a lone figure clad in an impeccable suit was casually dismantling his security forces. The human hoisted an ATM with one hand, smashing it down on a guard like it was nothing more than a paperweight. When the human noticed the camera, he smiled, gave a jaunty wave, and shot it out. The screen went static. Milo's body momentarily turned translucent, an instinctive viscoid response to sheer terror. He turned to Jorda, his voice no longer commanding but a pitiful squeak. "Get me to the shuttle. Now." The compound shook as explosions rattled the walls. Jorda kicked open the door to Milo's office and immediately grabbed a pistol from a trembling guard. Jorda glared down at the terrified soldier. "Go fight the human." The guard's face paled. But my pistol. How am I supposed to?" "Would you rather I kill you now?" Jorda roared, brandishing his mace. The guard yelped, saluted, and darted toward his doom. Jorda growled and motioned for Milo to follow. "Stick close, boss. And for the love of the stars, don't look back." But Milo couldn't help himself. Every gunshot, every scream, every explosion sounded closer than the last. Behind them, the human moved through the compound with a terrifying efficiency, cutting down guards and barriers like they were made of paper. The atrium was meant to be the crown jewel of Milo's compound. A cavernous, 20-story marvel of architecture, its glass walls offered breathtaking views of the city skyline, but now it was a killing ground. Jorda shoved Milo into the glass elevator and slammed the button for the top floor. Several guards tried to follow, but Jorda blocked their way with his mace. "This ride's reserved for paying customers," he growled, shutting the doors. As the elevator ascended, Milo glanced nervously at the glass. "Do you think it's bulletproof?" "I sure hope it is," Boss Jorda muttered. Below, chaos erupted as the human entered the atrium. Guards stationed on every balcony opened fire, their bullets raining down like a storm. But the human moved like liquid, weaving through the hail of gunfire with inhuman precision. He leapt from balcony to balcony, dispatching guards with brutal efficiency. Milo's gelatinous body quivered as the human picked up a rifle and aimed directly at the elevator. The first shot cracked the glass. The second sent spiderweb fractures across its surface. By the time the elevator reached the 20th floor, the glass was completely opaque, riddled with bullet holes. "The human's coming," Jorda said grimly, gripping his mace tighter. "We must go." The hallway stretched endlessly before them, the shuttle pad visible at the far end like a beacon of hope. Milo and Jorda ran as fast as their bodies would allow, the sound of destruction growing louder behind them. "Go," Boss Jorda barked, stopping abruptly. He turned to face the approaching human, his massive frame casting a long shadow. "Time for me to earn my pay." Milo didn't argue. He scurried forward, his tentacles flailing wildly. Jorda stood his ground, raising his mace. When the human appeared, Jorda swung with all his strength. But the human caught the weapon mid-swing, his grip like a vice. "You know," the human said with a smirk, "I expected more from someone who looks so much like Bigfoot." The human yanked the mace away and fired a single shot into Jorda's skull. The Hukthor warlord crumpled to the floor, his lifeless body sprawled across the hallway. Milo reached the shuttle doors and frantically slammed his tentacles against the control panel. The doors hissed open, but before he could step through, the human landed in front of him with a graceful flip. "Going somewhere?" the human asked, his voice calm and cold. Please," Milo stammered. "I'll give you anything you want. Money, power, anything." The human raised a hand to silence him. A holographic list appeared from his wristwatch, displaying Milo's crimes: slavery, sapient trafficking, murder, tax fraud. The human chuckled, shaking his head. "You crime lords really need to hire better accountants." He pulled an incendiary grenade from his vest and casually rolled it between his fingers. "Normally, I'd let you choose how you die. But for slavers, you all get the same treatment." He pulled the pin and tossed the grenade at Milo. "For what it's worth," the human said as he walked away, "I really hope it hurts." Milo's screams echoed across the compound as the grenade ignited, turning his gelatinous body into a blazing inferno. As the human boarded his shuttle, his AI assistant Joe appeared on a holographic screen. "Another successful mission," Bob Joe said cheerfully. "How are you feeling?" "Like I need a shower," Bob replied, glancing at the bloodstains on his suit. Joe chuckled. "Good thing you've got some RR scheduled after tomorrow's job. Next up, a dictator on Zilor 5. Should be fun." Bob leaned back in his seat as the shuttle lifted off. Below him, Milo's compound burned to ashes. "Just another day," he muttered, closing his eyes. The shuttle streaked through the twilight of Zilor 5, its engines humming in steady rhythm. Bob leaned back in his seat, staring at the holographic list projected on his wrist. Milo Golesh's name blinked softly, the word deceased etched next to it. "One down," Bob muttered, swiping the name away. Another list appeared, a roster of criminals, dictators, and warlords spread across the galaxy, all marked with the name-taker's signature insignia, a bullet through a skull. Joe Bob called to his AI assistant. "Yes, Bob. Pull up the intel on the next target. Let's skip the RR for now." Joe's holographic face flickered onto the dashboard, his expression programmed to emulate concern. "Skipping your downtime? Bob, you do realize that even without emotions, your biological components need rest. You're not invincible." "I'll sleep when the list is empty," Bob replied curtly. "Target profile. Now." Joe sighed theatrically, a habit he'd developed after years of studying Bob's human quirks. "All right. Next up, Kandrovilex, self-proclaimed ruler of Zilor 5. Charges include genocide, illegal cloning experiments, and using civilian populations for weapons testing. Quite the resume." Bob glanced at the detailed report, his face impassive. "What's his security like?" "Substantial," Joe said. "Kandro's palace is surrounded by a private army, automated turrets, and drone swarms. Plus, he's known to employ elite mercenaries." Bob cracked his knuckles. "Good. I could use a challenge." Zilor 5's capital city was a labyrinth of neon lights and towering spires, a stark contrast to the desolation of its outer colonies. Kandro's palace sat at the city's heart, a monolithic structure of black steel and glowing red veins, a fortress designed to intimidate and repel. Bob's shuttle landed undetected in a maintenance bay several kilometers from the palace. He stepped out, adjusting the cuffs of his suit, his pistol holstered and grenades clipped neatly to his belt. "All right, Joe," Bob said, his voice a low growl. "Guide me in." Joe's voice chimed in his earpiece. "You've got two entry points: the main gate, heavily guarded and suicidal, or the sewer system. Filthy, but discreet. Bob smirked. I like to make an entrance. He approached the main gate, a sprawling checkpoint bristling with guards and automated turrets. With calculated precision, Bob launched an EMP grenade, the device emitting a pulse that short-circuited the turrets and drone patrols. Before the guards could react, Bob was already among them. His movements were a blur, one guard disarmed with a twist of the wrist, another incapacitated with a single punch. Within seconds, the checkpoint was silent, its defenders sprawled across the ground. Gates clear, Bob said into his comm. What's next? Joe's holographic avatar appeared briefly on Bob's wrist. Impressive as always. The palace lobby is ahead, but it's crawling with mercenaries. I'm detecting thermal signatures at least 20. Bob drew his pistol, checking the ammo. 20, huh? That's barely a warm-up. Inside the palace, the atmosphere was tense. Mercenaries patrolled the marble floors, their armor gleaming under the crimson lights. Bob stepped through the entrance, his footsteps echoing ominously. Intruder, one of the guards shouted, raising his weapon. Bob didn't give them a chance. His first shot took out the leader, the bullet piercing his visor with pinpoint accuracy. Chaos erupted as the mercenaries opened fire, but Bob was already in motion. He vaulted over a table, firing mid-air and taking down 2 more guards. A grenade sailed across the room, exploding in a shower of shrapnel that sent others scrambling for cover. Joe, Bob said calmly as he ducked behind a pillar, "Give me their positions." Joe's voice responded instantly. 6 on the left flank, 3 on the balcony, and 1 hiding behind the statue. Bob moved like a shadow, eliminating each target with brutal efficiency. By the time the last guard fell, the lobby was silent, the air thick with smoke and the acrid scent of burning electronics. As Bob ascended the palace's central staircase, he entered a vast chamber filled with glass tubes, each containing a humanoid figure suspended in a viscous green fluid. Joe's voice sounded grim. Looks like Kandro's been busy. These clones, they're modified humans. Enhanced strength, speed, and endurance. If he activates them, you're in for a rough time. Bob examined the control panel at the center of the room. Can I shut them down? Negative, Joe replied. The system's hardwired. Best option? Destroy the power core. Where is it? 3 floors up. But Bob, you've got company. The chamber's doors burst open, and a squad of heavily armed clones stormed in. Bob dove behind a console as bullets ricocheted around him. Guess I'll have to thin the herd first, Bob muttered, drawing his grenades. After a grueling battle through the clone chamber and upper levels, Bob finally reached the throne room. Kandro Velex sat on a massive chair of blackened steel, his reptilian features twisted into a cruel grin. So Kandro hissed, rising to his feet. The infamous name-a-taker. I was wondering when they'd send you after me. Bob stepped forward, his pistol trained on Kandro. Your reign ends tonight. Kandro laughed, a guttural sound that echoed through the room. Do you think killing me will change anything? My legacy is already immortal. I've created an army, a future where rulers like me will never fall. Immortal or not, Bob said coldly, you bleed like everyone else. The two clashed in a brutal fight, Kandro's enhanced physique pushing Bob to his limits. But Bob's relentless efficiency and adaptability proved too much. As Kandro fell, blood pooling beneath him, he gasped, You're no human. You're a monster. Bob holstered his weapon. Takes one to know one. Back on the shuttle, Bob wiped the blood from his hands as Joe appeared on the dashboard. Another mission accomplished, Joe said. How are you holding up? Same as always, Bob replied. He glanced at the roster on his wrist. Kandro's name now marked deceased. Joe smirked. So, RR this time. Bob stared out the view screen, the city below engulfed in flames. Not yet. Who's next? Joe sighed. You never stop, do you? Bob's voice was firm. Not until the list is empty.